At the time that the aerial was being established on Gotha Street to perform those rescues, I also tasked two firefighters to make their way to the fire floor, make their way to that unit where we knew those persons were, to get across to that balcony and assist. So they were accessing that area with brake and anti-gear, thermal imaging camera, and they also had a hose line to assist in case that fire had broken through that ceiling in that unit.
So I was on the turret, firefighter Ryan was gearing up, putting the harness on and getting ready to get in the cage. Well, this time I'd lower the cage to the ground and he jumped in, and also 502 Lima turned out to the job.
We could see 3 people trapped on a balcony, and the aerial appliance was set up in a good location to perform the rescue. The arm of the aerial was still housed in the gallows. They hadn't taken off from the ground yet.
When getting the truck, which is 502 India, the infamous Eileen, we had a few problems getting it going. Stabilisers, getting it level, got it level, wouldn't come out of its cradle. We had to reset it twice, as in shut down ignition, shut it all down, get it back up, get the jacks back down. Had to do that twice. Not sure why. It was a bit of a slope on Gotha Street, but it was in parameters, within the safety parameters of the truck, so it's notorious for gremlins.
From the training and incidents I've been to before, you could see that this was not a job that would be performed by one man in a basket. You'd need, at the best, a crew of 3, at the least probably a crew of 2 to perform a rescue. I entered the basket with Todd Ryan. We moved our way to the fire floor, made contact with the 3 occupants of the apartment. I crossed over from the basket of 502 India onto the balcony, assisted 3 people to exit the building. At that stage I was working on a rough calculation that 100 kilos per man and 80 kilos per woman for the rescue. With loading the 3 occupants into the cage with Todd Ryan, that would have brought us up to 360 kilos. The safe working limit of the cage is 375 kilos. I knew that if I'd stepped back into the cage at that stage, back from the balcony, it would have, most likely the vehicle would have shut down because we would have hit the overload limit. So I elected to stay behind on the balcony and just wait for return, or wait for Sam Ashmore-Smith, my other team member, to back me up.
From when we got it up, eventually got it going right, took them up there, worked well, brought it back down, worked well, no worries. Then we sent it back up to the fire floor, put Matthew back on board, and then the guys started employing the monitor. And then the decision was made to move up to the balcony and take a 38 off the front of the bucket and firefight off the balcony. Be a bit more effective than a monitor.
When we commenced firefighting operations from the end of the aerial platform, basically we charged the line and then started moving through the apartment where the members of the public were trapped, and then started moving down the hall. Our first turn was a left turn into the neighbouring apartment. We opened the door to that apartment, or with the assistance of an internal crew who'd just made it to the floor, we opened the door to the next door apartment. The balcony of the next door unit was already on fire. We extinguished that fire. I believe that was the only fire in the apartment at that stage, but you could then notice a large glow coming off the reflective surface on the building next to us. So that was the first time that I really noticed that there was that the fire was much bigger than I'd thought. Basically, we could see we extinguished the fire on the balcony. I moved out on the balcony, and as you looked up, you could see just a big orange reflection of flame coming off the building next to us. At that stage, you had sections of the ceiling started to collapse. So I moved away from the balcony and went and stood in a doorway to try and find the safest spot in the building as the building began to lose structural integrity. Then moved back into the hallway where myself and Sam Ashmore met up with another BA crew who'd cut a hole in the ceiling and were conducting firefighting operations there, and we're having little effect on the fire. It was just an intense fire going overhead.
So I received a call off FireCom. I was at home and responded into town quite quickly after the early response and the early upgrade to fourth alarm. As I came onto the Story Bridge, I merged with one of the aerial appliances from Durack, coming from the Ipswich roadway. All I knew at that stage was initial arriving crews had set up a command structure, they'd set up a control point, and all of those options had been put in place, but no IMT per se had been established, although a number of other resources I was aware were on site, so being the DMO and a couple of other senior officers were either en route or on site, but I didn't get that full understanding until I arrived on site. I pulled up, not far off Tango, met Ty.
When control was handed to Superintendent Steve Smith, the briefing that I gave him was something that I've delivered 1,000 times in training courses and asked others to demonstrate to me, and I just made sure I sent the clearest message I could across to him. Advised him of the situation, advised him of the evacuations, which was probably a priority in his mind at that stage, and advised him also of how many people had been taken from scene to the hospital with smoke inhalation. One of the other major concerns that I know that Steve was interested in was firefighter safety and what we had in place in regards to ensuring the safety and wellbeing of firefighters on scene.
That's a really critical phase of that understanding the incident, because ask a few of those questions of the officer in charge, and when you get good answers, they come quickly, they're concise, things have been happening as they should be happening. Which gives you a great degree of comfort that the job's been handled well.
One of the main complications we had on the incident ground was tasking crews with maps that we had taken from the fire control room. At that time, we were not to know that these maps were as designed. We were treating them as built plans. So we were tasking crews through our sectors utilising these plans, which were incorrect in regards to the footprint and layout of the 5th floor. It wasn't until sometime into the incident that we were able to identify that the maps that we were reading from were inaccurate. There was a time there where we had an off-going shift and oncoming shift transition between C shift and B shift through the night shift. At the time that I established that we would relieve the fire suppression sector, Acting Station Officer Daniel Rasmussen, we sent Acting Station Officer Cameron Thomas to that location to take over that role as Sector Commander for fire suppression. He then pulled the plan down from the wall, sent it down with a crew. Water supplies we did identify as potentially being an issue in regards to overdrawing on our supply with our aerial appliances. We had 2 aerial appliances in action at one time, and we had a number of firefighting monitors that were being used off various pumpers at different times to put water up into the elevated position. We contacted Urban Utility Services to assist us with the gating of water to ensure that we had enough and adequate supplies. Within 45 minutes of attendance at this incident, I had identified that that entire roof space was affected. Soffit started to fall from the balconies of that top floor, which exposed those areas. What it did for us then is gave us a point of access into those ceiling cavities to get some water up into there and to chew up some of that heat, because there was a lot of heat within that ceiling space. And my main concern was possible roof collapse into that area where I had those firefighters on the 5th floor. We had approximately 14 firefighters up on level 5 at one particular time trying to penetrate the ceiling area itself to knock the fire out and to take some of the heat out of it. The word coming back from Station Officer Darelove was that the fire was incredibly intense and they were ineffective at that stage. I had to determine a plan of attack. At that time, it was decided between myself and the 2 DMOs that I had on Ann and Gotha Street, and DMO Steve Holland, who was running as a safety coordinator for our aerial appliances on the external, that we would have to attack this from the outside. To enable that, what we did was we removed all firefighters from the 5th floor and dropped them down to the 4th. While they were on the 4th floor, we sent crews up to their location with step ladders, ceiling breaching tools and additional hose lines, and we got them to stage in that location until we were satisfied that we'd taken a lot of the heat out of the ceiling. Simultaneously at this time, we got both aerial appliances on the outside of the structure to inject water into that ceiling space. We put as much water in there as short a time as possible, knowing full well that the weight of that water hitting that structure was also going to compromise the integrity of the strength of the roof. And we knocked as much heat out of that area as we could in the shortest possible time. When I was satisfied that that had happened within a few minutes, we shut all aerial operations down and simultaneously then moved all teams from the 4th floor up to the 5th, and we injected enough water into that ceiling space then to satisfy ourselves that we had knocked the main part of the fire out and that we were now just to focus on breaching that ceiling, pulling it down to get inside there and cool off any hot spots.